A kind poor girl saved an injured CEO man, but she had no idea the man bleeding in her arms, the one she chose over her last dollar, her safety, and her future, was already falling for her so deeply that he would change both their lives forever. Emily Carter had nothing, no family, no money, no one waiting for her at home, but she still chose kindness when it mattered most. On a quiet road, she found a man broken, unconscious, and barely breathing. A powerful CEO brought down to nothing, but instead of walking away like everyone else would, she stayed, she lifted him, she risked everything. Because she believed saving a life mattered more than her own struggles. But what Emily didn't know was this: the injured CEO man she saved wasn't just hurt, he was being hunted. And the moment he opened his eyes, he wouldn't just remember her kindness. He would fall for her deeply, dangerously, and completely. But why was a powerful CEO left to die like a nobody? Who were the people watching from the shadows that night? And when the truth about his identity finally comes out, will her kindness bring her love or destroy the only life she's ever known? Emily Carter counted the money in her hand twice. $17. The number didn't change, but something about saying it in her head made it feel more real, heavier. She folded the bills carefully, almost respectfully, before slipping them into her worn-out wallet. The leather was cracked at the edges, the zipper slightly broken, just like most things in her life, still working, but barely. 17, she whispered under her breath, forcing a small smile. That's enough. It wasn't, but she had trained herself not to argue with reality. Behind her, the laundromat machines rattled loudly, one of them letting out a sharp screech before going silent again. The owner would fix it tomorrow, or maybe not. Things stayed broken longer in places like this. Emily stepped outside into the night, pulling her thin sweater close around her. Her apartment was right upstairs. One room, small window, a mattress that creaked every time she turned, but it was hers, and that mattered. Earlier that night, at the hospital, she had been on her knees scrubbing a stain that refused to disappear. Emily, faster, a nurse had called out, barely glancing at her. Room 12 needs cleaning. Okay, Emily replied quickly, standing up and grabbing her supplies. Invisible. That's what she was there. Not a nurse. Not a doctor. Not someone whose name anyone remembered. Just the girl who cleaned up after everyone else. As she passed room 8, she noticed an elderly man struggling to reach his water. She paused, looked around. No one was watching. She stepped in quietly and handed it to him. Here you go, she said softly. The man smiled weakly. Thank you. I thought no one saw me. Emily's expression softened. I see you, Emily. The sharp voice pulled her back. Dr. Reynolds stood at the door, arms crossed. You're not paid to do that, he said flatly. Emily straightened slightly. He needed help. He sighed, clearly irritated. You care too much for someone who can't afford to. There was no insult in his tone, just cold truth. Emily hesitated for a second, then smiled gently. Kindness doesn't cost anything. Dr. Reynolds didn't reply. He just looked at her for a moment, like he wanted to argue, but didn't have the energy. Then he walked away. Now, walking alone under the dim streetlights, those words echoed back to her, because sometimes kindness did cost something, like time, like energy, like the last bit of strength she had left. She reached the corner where the road split. The main road was bright, safe, longer. The shortcut was dark, quiet, and faster. Emily stared at the darker path. A faint uneasiness crept into her chest. Not fear, just hesitation. Then she exhaled slowly. Just 5 minutes, she murmured. 5 minutes saved meant 5 more minutes of rest. And tomorrow, she had another double shift. So she turned. The shortcut felt different tonight, too. Quiet. Her footsteps echoed softly against the uneven ground. Then she saw it. Car. Tilted, damaged. Her steps slowed. Hello, she called out. No answer. Her heart began to beat faster as she moved closer. And then she saw him, a man lying beside the car. Still. To still. Emily froze. Her breath caught in her throat. For a moment, everything inside her screamed one thing: leave. But something else, something deeper, refused. She stepped closer. Hey, can you hear me? No response. She knelt beside him, her fingers trembling slightly as she reached for his wrist. Pulsed weak. But there. Alive. Relief washed over her, but it didn't last. Because now came the harder part. What do you do next? In the distance, headlights appeared. A black SUV. Emily instinctively stepped back slightly. Her body tensed. The vehicle slowed as it approached. To slow. As if it was watching. Her grip tightened. The SUV rolled forward, then slightly reversed. Just a little, like it was deciding something. Emily held her breath. Our instincts whispered something she couldn't fully explain. This isn't right. Then suddenly, the SUV sped off. Gone. Too quickly. Her heart pounded. Something about that moment stayed with her, feeling she couldn't shake. Her eyes returned to the man. Up close, she could see more now. His clothes expensive, perfectly tailored, even torn and stained with blood. They carried a kind of quiet power. His watch caught the faint light. Not flashy, but refined. The kind of thing only someone extremely wealthy would wear. Emily swallowed. Who are you? She whispered. Miles away, in a high-rise office overlooking the city, a glass lay shattered on the floor. A man stood near the window, phone pressed to his ear. He's not dead? The voice on the other end demanded. The man's jaw tightened. No, the car went off the road, but we didn't confirm it. Double quote silence. Then, colder. Find him before he remembers anything. The line went dead. Back on the dark road, Emily leaned closer to the injured man. There was blood near his temple. His breathing was uneven. Then his lips moved. Don't. Emily leaned in. Don't what? But the word never came. He slipped back into silence. A memory surfaced in her mind. Not his. Hers. 16 years old. Standing outside a foster home, a bag in her hand, a door closing behind her. No one calling her back. No one choosing her. She had waited longer than she should have, just in case. No one came. Back in the present, something inside her settled. A quiet decision. No one's leaving you here, she said softly. Even if it cost her, even if it changed everything. She slid her arm under his shoulder. He was heavy. Her body strained as she tried to lift him. Okay, come on, she whispered, half to him, half to herself. Step by step, inch by inch. She dragged him away from the road, away from danger, not knowing that the danger wasn't gone, and not knowing that the man she was saving, Daniel Hayes, CEO of a billion-dollar empire, was already stepping into a story that would bind their lives together in ways neither of them could escape. Emily didn't remember how long it took, only that every step felt heavier than the last. By the time she reached the narrow staircase leading up to her apartment, her arms were shaking uncontrollably. The man's weight leaned against her like a constant reminder of the decision she had already made. There was no turning back now. Just a little more, she whispered, her voice barely steady. He didn't respond. He hadn't responded since that broken word on the road, but he was still breathing. And for Emily, that was enough. The hallway upstairs smelled faintly of detergent and old wood. The flickering bulb above buzzed softly, threatening to go out at any second. Emily pushed her door open with her foot. The room was small, barely enough space for a mattress, a chair, and a tiny table by the window. Everything she owned fit within those four walls. And now, so did him. She guided him down slowly onto the mattress, her breath coming in uneven bursts. Okay, you're safe now, she said, more to calm herself than him. For a moment, she just stood there, staring. He didn't belong here. Everything about him said that, even unconscious. There was something controlled about his posture, something disciplined in the way his hands rested, like a man used to command, not collapse. Emily shook her head slightly, pulling herself back to the present. Focus, she muttered. She grabbed the small first aid kit she kept under the sink, barely stocked, mostly leftovers from when she had treated herself through fevers and minor injuries. As she carefully cut through the fabric of his sleeve, she paused. The material was expensive. Too expensive. Her fingers hesitated for a second before continuing. You can replace clothes, she murmured quietly. You can't replace this. As she cleaned the wound on his arm, he flinched slightly. Hey, it's okay, she said softly. I'm trying to help. No response, but his breathing shifted just slightly. Alive. Still fighting. Across the city, Lights burned in a towering glass building. Hayes Corporation. At the top floor, a tense meeting had already begun. "He's missing," a man said sharply. Pacing across the room. Mark Sullivan, chief financial officer, trusted partner, and the last person to see Daniel Hayes alive. "We've searched the crash site." Another voice added. "There was blood, but no body." Mark stopped walking. "That wasn't supposed to happen." "Then he's alive," he said. Slowly. The room fell silent. That truth settled heavily over everyone present. Alive meant dangerous. Alive meant he could come back. And if Daniel came back, everything they had done would collapse. Mark's expression hardened. "Find him," he ordered quietly, "before he remembers." Back in Emily's apartment, the silence felt different. Quieter. But heavier. She sat beside him, carefully wrapping the bandage around his arm. Her movements were gentle, practiced not from training, but from necessity. Years of taking care of herself had taught her more than any hospital ever could. No insurance meant no doctors. No help meant learning the hard way. She had stitched her own wounds before. This wasn't new. As she reached for his jacket to remove it, something slipped out of the inner pocket. A phone. Sleek, black, expensive. It landed softly on the floor. Emily froze. For a moment, she just stared at it. Then slowly picked it up. The screen lit up instantly, with a facial recognition attempt failing. Locked. Of course, she swallowed. "This is none of your business," she whispered to herself. And yet, her eyes lingered on it a second longer than they should have. Then she placed it gently on the table. And touched. Daniel's single quotes as fingers twitched slightly. Emily noticed immediately. "Hey, can you hear me?" A pause. Then, slowly, his eyes opened. Just a fraction. Dark and focused, confused. They moved slightly, trying to take in the unfamiliar surroundings. The small room, the dim light. Her. "Where?" His voice was hoarse, barely audible. Emily leaned closer. "You're safe," she said gently. "You had an accident?" His brow furrowed slightly. Accident. The word echoed in his mind, but something about it didn't feel complete. Fragments flickered. A meeting, a voice, breaks, failing. Then nothing. His breathing grew uneven. Emily noticed the shift immediately. "Don't try to think too hard," she said softly. "You're hurt." He looked at her again. Really looked this time. Her face, tired, but kind, her hand slightly rough. Careful. Not afraid. That was the first thing he noticed. She wasn't afraid of him. Most people were, even when he said nothing, even when he simply walked into a room. But her, she just saw someone who needed help. And that was new. "Why?" His voice struggled again. "Why help me?" The question lingered in the air. Simple. But heavy. Emily blinked slightly, surprised, and she gave a small, almost shy smile. "Because you needed it." He stared at her. As if that answer didn't make sense. As if there had to be more. "There's always a reason," he murmured faintly. Emily shook her head. "Not always." A silence settled between them, but it wasn't empty. It was something else. Something neither of them fully understood yet. Outside, far below, a car slowed near the building. Not stopping, just observing. Inside, Daniel's eyes began to close again, his strength fading. But just before sleep took him, one thought stayed clearer. The girl who had nothing, but gave him everything in that moment. And somewhere deep inside him a feeling began. Quiet. Unfamiliar. But undeniable. Daniel drifted in and out of consciousness, the pain coming in waves, sharp, then dull, then distant again. Every time his eyes opened, the same small room greeted him, the same cracked ceiling, the same faint scent of detergent. And her. Emily moved quietly, almost like she didn't want to disturb the air itself. She poured water into a chipped cup, her movements careful, measured. "Drink," she said softly, supporting his head. He obeyed, barely. A few drops spilled. But she didn't react. She simply wiped it gently with the edge of her sleeve. No annoyance. No impatience. Just care. Hours passed. Or maybe it was a day. Daniel couldn't tell. Time felt broken, like his memory. Every time he tried to think deeper, something resisted, like a locked door inside his mind. But pieces still slipped through. A long conference table, voices raised. Marked. A contract. Then a Sudden flash. Brakes failing. A sharp turn. Darkness. His eyes snapped. Open. His breathing quickened. Emily noticed. Immediately. Hey, it's okay, she said, moving closer. You're safe. He looked at her, disoriented. Someone, he whispered. Emily leaned in. What? He shook his head weakly. It's gone. Not the memory, but the clarity of it. Like trying to hold water in his hands. Emily studied him quietly. Something wasn't right. This wasn't just an accident. Even without knowing his identity, she could feel it. The way he reacted. The way his body tensed at nothing. The way his eyes searched the room like he expected danger. She had seen fear before. But this was different. Do you remember your name? She asked gently. He hesitated. A pause. Then, Daniel. The word came slowly, but firmly, like it mattered. Emily nodded. Okay, Daniel. She didn't ask anything else. Didn't push. And that surprised him. Most people would. They would ask questions, demand answers, try to figure out what they could gain. But she accepted what he gave, and nothing more. Later that evening, Emily sat by the window, counting coins. Not bills this time. Coins. Her last few. She exhaled quietly. Food. Or medicine, she murmured. Both weren't possible. Not right now. Behind her, Daniel watched. Silent. Observing. He noticed everything. The way she counted twice. The way she hesitated before putting some coins aside. The way she chose the smaller portion for herself when she brought food. Foreshadowing layered detail. Even in his weakened state, his instincts were intact. He had built an empire by noticing what others ignored. And right now he was noticing her. You should eat more, he said suddenly. His voice still weak. Emily turned, surprised. I did? He shook his head slightly. No, you didn't. A small pause. Then she smiled faintly. I'm used to it. That answer stayed with him. Used to it. Not complaining. Not asking. Just accepting. A flicker of something unfamiliar passed through him. Guilt. He didn't understand it fully, but it was there. Because for the first time in his life, he was seeing what it meant to have nothing and still give. That night, as Emily slept in the chair again, Daniel remained awake longer. Watching. Thinking. Feeling something shift inside him. Across the city, Mark stood in a dim office, staring at a file. Daniel Hayes. Net worth, billions. Influence global. Threat level, rising. Mark closed the file slowly. If he's alive, he muttered, he'll come back. And if he came back, Mark would lose everything. Back in the small apartment, Emily stirred slightly in her sleep. A quiet whisper escaped her lips. Don't leave. Daniel heard it. His eyes shifted toward her. There was something in that voice, not fear, not even sadness. Something deeper. The abandonment. A younger Emily, sitting alone on a bed in a stranger's house. A suitcase at her feet. Voices in the next room arguing. She's not staying here. We can't afford another mouth. The door opening. Pack your things. Double quotes again. And again. And again. Back in the present. Daniel's gaze softened. For someone with nothing, she carried too much. And for the first time, he made a quiet decision. Not spoken, not even fully understood yet, but real. He wouldn't forget her. Outside, that same black SUV passed the building again. Slower this time. Closer. And inside, neither of them knew the danger was no longer distant. It was getting closer. Morning came quietly, but tension lingered in the small apartment like something unseen. Emily woke up stiff, her neck aching from sleeping in the chair again. For a moment, she forgot he was there. Then she turned. Daniel was awake. Not just awake, watching her. How long have you been up? She asked, quickly standing. Long enough, he replied, voice steadier now. That alone told her something important. He was getting stronger, and strength meant change. She moved toward the small table, pretending to focus on pouring water. You should still rest, she said. Your injuries aren't fully healed. Daniel sat up slightly, ignoring the discomfort. I've rested enough. That wasn't true, but it sounded like the kind of thing a man like him would say. Emily glanced at him. You don't even know where you are. I know I'm not where I belong, he said calmly. That made her pause. There was something different about him now. Less confusion, more control. The kind of control that didn't come from recovery, But from identity. Something was returning. Daniel, she said carefully. What do you remember? A brief silence followed. His jaw tightened. Slightly. Enough to know this wasn't an accident. The words landed heavily in the room. Emily felt it. Immediately. That quiet confirmation, of which she had already suspected. She turned fully toward him. Someone did this to you. He held her gaze. Yes. No hesitation. No doubt. Chill ran through her. Her mind flashed back to the black SUV. The way it slowed. The way it watched. They might come back, she said quietly. Daniel didn't respond immediately, but his eyes shifted slightly toward the window. Calculating. Measuring. Double quotes. Then we don't wait for them, he said. Emily frowned. What does that mean? It means I need to leave. The words came too fast. To certain. Something inside her reacted instantly. No, he looked at her, surprised. You can barely stand, she continued. If someone is after you, walking out there like this is the worst thing you can do. He studied her. Not just her words, her reaction. There was fear there, but not for herself. Him. You're risking yourself by keeping me here, he said. I already made that choice, she replied. No hesitation. No regret. That answer settled something inside him. A quiet shift, deeper than logic. Emily turned away again, reaching for the small bag of supplies. I'll go out and get more medicine, she said. Daniel's expression changed instantly. No, she looked back. I have to. You need it. It's not safe. A pause. Then she gave a small, almost amused smile. It wasn't safe the moment I brought you here. That hit harder than expected, because it was true. She grabbed her sweater. I'll be quick. Daniel pushed himself up slightly, pain flashing across his face. Emily. She stopped. It was the first time he said her name. Not just heard it, used it. Be careful, he said quietly. She nodded once. I always am. But that wasn't entirely true. If it were, she wouldn't have him here. The door closed behind her. Silence returned. Daniel exhaled slowly, his gaze shifting around the room again. Now that his mind was clearer, everything stood out more. The worn furniture, the limited space, the absence of anything unnecessary. She lived with only what she needed, nothing more. His eyes landed on the table. The phone. His phone. He reached for it, fingers tightening slightly as he picked it up. The screen lit up. Locked up, but not for long. He stared at it, his reflection faintly visible on the surface. And for a brief moment a flash. A boardroom. Voices raised. Mark standing across from him. You're losing control. Daniel. No, Daniel had replied coldly. I'm taking it back. The memory snapped away, but this time it didn't fade completely. His grip on the phone tightened. They tried to kill me, he murmured under his breath. Not a question anymore. A fact. Outside, Emily walked quickly down the street, her eyes scanning instinctively. She kept her head down, but her awareness was sharp. Years of being alone had taught her one thing: pay attention. As she reached the pharmacy, she hesitated for a second before entering. Inside, everything felt normal. To normal. Can I help you? The cashier asked. Emily nodded, listing the basic supplies she needed. Bandages. Painkillers. Nothing unusual. But as she reached into her pocket, her fingers froze. The coins, still there, but not enough. She hesitated, then quietly removed one item. Then another. Until only the essentials remained. Is that all? The cashier asked. Emily forced a small smile. Yes. Outside, as she stepped away, a black SUV sat across the street. Engine running. Emily didn't look directly at it, but she felt it. That same feeling from before. Heavy. Watching. Inside the apartment, Daniel stood slowly, ignoring the pain, because something told him time was running out. And somewhere between them, without saying it out loud, both of them were stepping closer to something unavoidable. Danger. Truth. And something even more dangerous. Feelings neither of them were ready to face. Emily walked faster than usual, her grip tightening around the small paper bag. The sound of her footsteps felt louder now, almost exposed. She did not turn her head, but her awareness stretched behind her like a shadow. The black SUV was still there. Parked. Waiting. Her heartbeat rose, but her face remained calm. Years of surviving alone had taught her how to hide fear, how to move without drawing attention. Do not run. Do not look back. She crossed the street naturally, blending with the few people around. The reflection in a shop window gave her just enough to confirm the SUV moved. Slowly. Following. Inside the apartment, Daniel stood near the window, his body tense despite the pain pulling at his side. His instincts have fully returned now, sharp and precise. He did not need confirmation. He already knew. They were close. Close. His mind worked quickly, connecting fragments that were no longer broken. The meeting, Mark's voice, the deal he refused to sign. You are making a mistake, Mark had said. No, Daniel replied coldly. You already made yours. 3 nights earlier, Daniel sat at the head of a long glass table. Board members lined both sides, silent but watching. Mark stood across from him, calm but calculating. It is a strategic move, Mark insisted. We sell the division, we gain leverage. Daniel's gaze hardened. You are not gaining leverage, he said. You are giving control away. A quiet tension filled the room. Then Daniel leaned forward slightly. I built this company from nothing. I do not hand it over because someone panics. Mark's expression shifted. Just slightly. Not anger. Something colder. You are not seeing the full picture, Daniel replied without hesitation. No, you are hiding it. Back in the present, Daniel's jaw tightened. That was the moment everything changed. That was when Mark stopped being an ally. And became something else. A faint sound outside pulled Daniel's attention back. A car door. Closing. He moved away from the window immediately. To exposed. Outside. Emily's steps slowed as she approached her building. The SUV had stopped again. This time farther down but still close enough. Waiting. Watching. Her chest tightened. It is not random. That thought settled clearly now. She reached the staircase but paused. For a brief second, doubt crept in. If you go upstairs, you bring them to him. Her fingers tightened around the bag. Then another thought followed. If you walk away, you leave him alone. That answer came faster. She climbed. Inside. Daniel heard the door before it opened. Soft. Careful. He stepped back slightly, positioning himself where he could see clearly. Door creaked open. Emily stepped in. Their eyes met instantly. No words, but everything passed between them. They are outside, she said quietly. Daniel nodded once. I know. She closed the door quickly, placing the bag on the table. They followed me, she added, her voice steady but lower now. Daniel's expression did not change, but his mind moved faster. How many? I only saw the car. That was enough. Heavy silence filled the room. Not fear. Preparation. Emily turned toward him. You need to hide. The words came naturally. Instinctively. Daniel almost responded immediately but stopped, because that response was not the one he expected from himself. He was not a man who hid. He was the one others ran from. Yet here he was. In her space. Under her protection. They are not here for you, he said. They are here for you, she replied. A pause. Then, softer. And you are here. That answer landed deeper than logic. Daniel stepped closer, ignoring the strain in his body. You should leave, he said. Emily shook her head. No, Emily. I said no. Her voice was not loud. But it was firm. For a moment, they simply looked at each other. To people from completely different worlds standing in the same danger. A sudden sound interrupted them. Footsteps. Outside. Closer. Emily single quotes S. Breath slowed. Back room, she whispered quickly. There is no back room, Daniel replied. She grabbed his hand. Then we make one. She pulled him toward the corner, where a thin curtain separated a small storage space, barely enough to hide anything, but it was something. Stay quiet, she said, her voice softer now. Daniel held her wrist gently. Emily, she looked at him. And for a brief second, everything else disappeared. If anything happens, started, it will not, she cut in. A small pause. Then, almost without thinking, because I will not let it. That certainty. It was unfamiliar to him. No hesitation. No calculation. Just belief. A loud knock hit the door. Both of them froze. Another knock. Harder, Open up. A man's voice. Cold. Controlled. Emily slowly stepped away from Daniel. Her heart pounded but her face stayed calm. She moved toward the door. Each step measured. Behind her. Daniel remained still. Watching. Listening. Ready. The knock came again. Impatient now. Emily reached the door. Her hand rested on the handle. For a brief second she closed her eyes. Then she opened it. Two men stood outside. Sharp suits, sharper eyes. We are looking for someone, one of them said. Emily tilted her head slightly. Then you should keep looking. The man's gaze hardened. We have reason to believe he is here. Pause. Then an injured man. Emily did not move. Did not react. You are mistaken, she said calmly. Behind the curtain. Daniel watched everything. And in that moment something shifted completely inside him, because the kind poor girl who had saved him was now standing between him and danger, without fear. And he realized something he had never felt before. He did not just owe her his life. He was already falling for her, far deeper than he should. Emily stood at the doorway, her hands still resting on the handle, her body blocking the entrance just enough to control what they could see. The two men did not move. Their eyes scanned past her, sharp and deliberate. We would like to come in, one of them said. Not a request, a decision. Emily's expression remained calm. This is a private residence, she replied. You cannot just walk in. The second man stepped slightly forward. We are not asking. Behind the curtain, Daniel's body tensed. His breathing slowed deliberately, controlled, silent. Every instinct told him to act, but acting now injured, exposed would only make things worse. So he waited. And watched her. Emily tilted her head slightly, as if considering. Then she stepped aside. Fine, she said. But you will not find anything here. The men entered. The room suddenly felt smaller. Their presence filled it, heavy and intrusive. One of them walked slowly toward the table, his eyes landing on the medicine bag. Fresh. Recently bought. He picked it up. Someone is injured, he said. Emily crossed her arms lightly. I am, she replied. He looked at her. Unconvinced. The other men moved toward the curtain. Daniel's pulse tightened, but his face remained still. The man stopped just short of it. Then turned slightly. His gaze moved to the floor. Footprints. Faint. But there. Emily noticed. Her voice came quickly. I clean here. That is what I do. The man looked up at her. A long pause followed. Earlier patterns aligned quietly in his mind. The pharmacy purchase, the delayed return, the subtle tension in her posture. Nothing confirmed, but nothing dismissed. Who do you live with? He asked. Alone. Always. Yes. No hesitation. The man stepped closer to her. To close. You seem very calm, he said. Emily met his gaze. Should I not be? Behind them, the second man finally reached for the curtain. His fingers touched the edge. Then a phone vibratd. Sharp. Sudden. Everyone froze. The man by the curtain pulled out his phone. Glancing at the screen, his expression shifted slightly. Sir, he said into it, stepping aside. A pause. Listening. The first man watched him closely. What is it? He asked quietly. The second man lowered the phone. We need to move. Now, a brief silence followed. Frustration flickered across the first man's face, but he did not argue. He turned back to Emily. This is not over. Then, both men walked out. The door closed. Silence returned. But it was not the same silence as before. Emily did not move immediately. Her body remained still, listening for footsteps, for anything. Then finally she exhaled. Behind the curtain, Daniel stepped out slowly. His eyes were fixed on her. You lied without hesitation, he said. Emily shrugged slightly. They were not asking for the truth. He studied her. There was more to her than he first saw. Much more. Why did they leave? She asked. Daniel's expression darkened slightly. Because something else just became more important. A pause. Then. Or someone. That thought lingered between them. Unanswered. Emily moved toward the table, her hands slightly unsteady now that the danger had passed. Then they will come back, she said quietly. Daniel nodded. Double quotes. Yes. That word settled heavily. No comfort. No illusion. Just truth. Emily turned to him. Then, you cannot stay here. The words were different this time. Not fear. Realization. Daniel did not respond immediately, because part of him did not want to leave. I have somewhere else I can go, he said. Finally. Not entirely true, but not entirely false either. Emily shook her head slightly. You can barely walk. I will manage. A quiet tension built between them, something unspoken. You are not a normal person, are you? She asked suddenly. Daniel looked at her. What makes you say that? She gestured lightly. Those men. Your reaction. The way you speak. A pause. Then you are not just someone who had an accident. Daniel held her gaze for a moment. The truth sat right there. Between them. But instead of answering, he said something else. You are not just someone who cleans floors. That caught her off guard. He stepped closer. Slower this time. You see things. You think ahead. You do not panic. A slight pause. You adapt. Emily looked away briefly. That is called survival. Another silence followed, but this one was different. Softer. Heavier. Outside. The black SUV was gone, but not for a never far. Inside, two lives that should have never crossed were now tied together by something stronger than circumstance. Danger. Choice. And something neither of them had planned. Connection. And somewhere deep within Daniel, that connection was no longer just awareness. It was becoming something else, something deeper, something he could not control. Emily moved quietly, gathering what little she owned into a small worn bag. A few clothes, her documents, the remaining coins, everything she could not afford to lose. Her movements were quick but controlled, like someone used to leaving without notice. Daniel watched her. You are leaving, he said. She did not stop. You said they will come back. They might. They will, she corrected calmly. That certainty settled the decision. Daniel stepped closer despite the pain pulling through his body. You should not have to run because of me. Emily glanced at him. I am not running because of you. I am leaving because I know how people like them work. He studied her. How? She zipped the bag. Because I have seen what happens when you stay where you are not safe. Flashback. A deep foreshadowing. A younger Emily stood in a cramped apartment, voices shouting around her. A man slammed a door, glass breaking somewhere behind it. She stood still, holding her breath, waiting for it to stop. It never did. The next morning, she left before anyone noticed. Back in the present, she adjusted the strap on her shoulder. I do not wait for things to get worse, she added. Daniel absorbed that. Every decision she made came from experience, not impulse. Where will you go? He asked. She paused for a brief second. Then shrugged lightly. I will figure it out. That answer bothered him more than it should have, because he knew what it meant. No plan. No safety net. Just survival. You cannot just disappear, he said. I have done it before. That quiet truth carried weight. Daniel's gaze sharpened. Should not have to live like that. Emily looked at him directly. Now, and you should not be hunted by people in suits. But here we are. A brief silence followed, then a faint sound outside. Both of them froze. A car slowed closer than before. Emily moved instantly toward the window but stopped short of exposing herself. Daniel stepped beside her, keeping distance from the light. Neither spoke. They listened. The engine remained running. Not passing, not leaving. They are back, Emily whispered. Daniel's expression hardened. No, he said quietly. Not them. She looked at him. How do you know? Because if it were them, they would not wait. That difference mattered. A car door opened. Closed. Footsteps. One person, not two. Emily's grip tightened around her bag. Daniel's body shifted slightly, ready despite the pain. A knock followed. Not aggressive. Measured. They exchanged a quick look. This was different. I will handle it, Daniel said. Emily shook her head immediately. You can barely stand. I can stand enough. Before she could argue again, he moved toward the door. Slow. Controlled. He opened it. A man stood there. Older. Dressed sharply but not threatening. His eyes met Daniel's. Instantly. Recognition. Double quotes. Mr. Hayes, the man said quietly. Emily's breath caught behind him. Daniel's expression did not change. Thomas Reed had been Daniel's head of security for over 10 years. Loyal, precise, and one of the few people Daniel trusted without question. If Thomas was here, it meant something had shifted. I found you, Thomas continued, lowering his voice. We need to leave immediately. Emily stepped forward slightly. You know him. Thomas glanced at her briefly, then back at Daniel. She is the one who helped you. Daniel did not hesitate. Double quotes yes. That single word carried weight. Thomas nodded once. Then she comes with us. Emily shook her head quickly. No, I am not part of this. Daniel turned slightly toward her. You already are. A pause. That truth settled heavily. Emily looked between them. The injured man she had saved, now standing in front of someone who clearly worked for him. Someone who called him Mr. Hayes. Who are you? She asked quietly. Daniel held her gaze. This time he did not avoid it. My name is Daniel Hayes, he said. A brief pause. Then, I am the CEO of Hayes Corporation. Silence. The room felt smaller again, but for a completely different reason. Emily stepped back slightly. Everything connected at once. The suit. The watch. The men. You are that Daniel Hayes? She asked. He nodded once. 1,000 thoughts crossed her mind, but one stayed louder than the rest. She had brought a billionaire CEO into her tiny apartment. And now people were trying to kill him. Outside, more cars approached in the distance. Time was gone. Thomas spoke again, sharper now. We have seconds. Daniel looked at Emily. Not as a stranger, not as someone who helped him, but as someone who mattered now. Come with me, he said. The choice stood in front of her. Clear. Dangerous. Unavoidable. And for the second time Emily had to decide. Emily did not answer immediately. Her eyes stayed on Daniel, searching his face as if the truth might change if she looked long enough. A CEO, a powerful man, the kind of person who lived in buildings she only ever cleaned, and yet he had been lying on the road, broken, helpless, and she had carried him. Fed him, protected him. Come with me, Daniel repeated, his voice lower now. Not commanding. Asking. Emily tightened her grip on the bag. If I go with you, I do not come back to this life, she said. It was not fear. It was understanding. Daniel did not look away. You do not have to go back to it. That answer came too quickly, too easily. Emily shook her head slightly. You do not understand. A pause. Then, quieter. This life may not be much, but it is mine. For a brief moment, Daniel had no response, because she was right. He had never had to fight to keep something so small, yet so meaningful. Outside, the sound of engines grew louder. More than one car now. Thomas stepped forward. We are out of time. Emily's heartbeat quickened. The moment was closing. Fast. She looked at Daniel again, not as a CEO, not as a powerful man, but as the injured stranger she had found. You said they tried to kill you, she said. He nodded. Once. And if they find you again, they will not miss. That answer was simple. Honest. Deadly. Emily exhaled slowly. Then, fine. Daniel's eyes shifted slightly. Not surprised. Relief. But I am not going because of your money, she added quickly. I am going because leaving you alone right now would mean you die. That hit deeper than anything else she had said, because it was not about him. Not his power, not his name, just him. Daniel gave a small nod. That is enough. Thomas moved immediately this way. They stepped out of the apartment together. Emily did not look back, not at the chair. Not at the mattress, not at the life she was leaving behind. She had left places before, quietly, without attachments, but this time felt different. This time, she was not just escaping something, she was stepping into something unknown. Outside, 2 black vehicles waited. Not the same as before. These were different. Controlled. Organized. Thomas opened the door. Get in. Emily hesitated for a brief second, then entered. Daniel followed. The door shut. The car moved instantly. Through the window, Emily saw the street disappear. The building. The corner. Gone. Silence filled the car for a moment. Then, were you hurt anywhere else? She asked suddenly, turning to Daniel. Thomas glanced at her through the mirror. Even now, she was thinking about him. I will manage, Daniel replied. Emily frowned slightly. That is not an answer. A faint shift crossed his expression. Almost Unfamiliar. No, he said more quietly. Nothing else serious. She nodded once. Satisfied. The car sped through the city. Lights passing quickly. Time compressing. Emily leaned back slightly, her mind trying to process everything. A few hours ago, she had been counting coins. Now she was sitting in a guarded vehicle beside a billionaire. You should not trust me this easily, Daniel said suddenly. She looked at him. I do not. That answer caught him off guard. Then why come? He asked. Emily turned her gaze forward. Because I trust what I did, she said. I chose to save you. I'm just following that choice to the end. That answer stayed with him. Boardrooms, contracts, negotiations, every decision calculated, every relationship measured by value. No one had ever said something like that to him. No one had ever stayed without expecting something in return. Back in the present, Daniel looked at her differently. Not with curiosity, not with interest, something deeper. Outside, one of the trailing cars slowed suddenly. Thomas noticed immediately. His voice sharpened. We have a tail. Daniel's expression changed instantly. Who? Not ours. Emily's body tensed. Is it them? Thomas did not answer immediately, but his silence was enough. The car accelerated. Behind them, headlights followed. Closer. Inside the vehicle, everything shifted again, from escape to pursuit. Daniel looked forward, his voice calm but firm. They found us. Emily's grip tightened slightly. Her life had already changed. Now it was moving faster than she could control, and somewhere between fear and uncertainty, one truth settled clearly inside her. She was no longer just the girl who helped out. She was part of something bigger now, something dangerous. And beside her, the man she saved was no longer just a stranger. The car surged forward, engine roaring as the city lights blurred into streaks of gold and white. Emily gripped the edge of her seat, her heart pounding not from fear alone, but from the realization that there was no turning back now. Behind them, the headlights stayed locked in place. Stop following. Closing in. They are not backing off, Thomas said, his voice tight as he checked the mirror. Daniel's expression hardened. Then they are not just tracking me anymore, he said. They are trying to finish it. Emily swallowed, her voice steady despite everything. Who would want you dead that badly? Daniel did not answer immediately, but his silence was not empty. It was heavy. Earlier that week, a contract had been pushed onto Daniel's desk, one that would shift control of a major division within Hayes Corporation. He had rejected it without hesitation. The signatures on that document had included names he trusted, or thought he did. A delayed brake response in his car the same night, a missed security check. Small things. At the time, they felt like coincidences. Now they formed a pattern. This did not start tonight, Daniel said finally. Emily looked at him. What do you mean? It means someone close to me made a decision, he replied. And I am the problem they are trying to remove. That truth landed harder than the chase itself. The car behind them accelerated. Closer now. Aggressive. Thomas turned sharply, taking a narrow road. Hold on. The vehicle swerved, tires screeching as it cut through a tight corner. Emily braced herself instinctively. Daniel's arm moved slightly in front of her, not touching, but ready. The pursuing car followed, relentless. They are trained, Thomas muttered. Not random. Another turn, another burst of speed. Emily's breathing quickened, but her eyes stayed focused. Where are we going? She asked. A secure location, Thomas replied. Somewhere they cannot reach easily. Daniel's gaze flicked briefly toward the rear window. They are getting closer. A moment later, a sharp sound. Shot. The back window cracked slightly. Emily flinched. Get down, Thomas ordered. Daniel pulled Emily lower without hesitation, his hand firm, protective. The car sped faster. Younger Emily crouched behind a broken wall, covering her ears as shouting echoed outside. Her body still, her breathing controlled, waiting for danger to pass. She had learned early: panic makes you visible. Silence keeps you safe. Back in the present, she stayed low. Steady. Not frozen. You are handling this well, Daniel said quietly. She glanced at him briefly. I told you. I have seen worse. Another shot rang out. Closer. Thomas' single quotes as voice cut through the tension. We cannot outrun them for long. Daniel's mind moved quickly, calculating. Take the industrial route. he said. Thomas hesitated for half a second, then nodded. The car veered sharply again, heading toward a darker stretch of the city. Less traffic, fewer lights. Emily noticed. That area is empty, she said. Exactly, Daniel replied. A pause, then she understood. You are not trying to escape, she said slowly. You are trying to confront them. Daniel did not. Daniel Hayes had not built his empire by running. Every threat, every competitor, every betrayal, he faced it directly. It was how he survived at the top. It was how he stayed there. The car behind them followed into the darker road. Committed. Thomas single quotes as grip tightened on the wheel. This is risky. We do not have a better option, Daniel replied. Emily looked at him. You could die. He met her gaze. So could you. That truth hung between them. Unavoidable. The car sped into the empty stretch. Streetlights flickering, shadows stretching long across the road. Then suddenly. Thomas slammed the brakes and turned hard. Their car spun slightly, stopping at an angle. The pursuing vehicle had no time. It swerved to late. It skidded past them. For a brief second everything stopped. Then doors flew open. Men stepped out. Armed. Thomas reached for his weapon. Daniel stepped forward despite the pain. Emily stayed inside, but her eyes were wide, locked on everything happening. This was no longer escape. This was confrontation. And in that moment she realized something deeper. The man she saved was not just someone being hunted. He was someone who would fight back. No matter the cost. The night held its breath. Streetlights flickered above the empty road as both sides faced each other, and moving for a fraction of a second that felt like forever. Then everything exploded. Gunfire shattered the silence. Thomas moved first, precise and controlled, returning fire as he positioned himself in front of Daniel. Daniel stepped forward despite the sharp pain tearing through his side, refusing to stay back. Emily remained inside the car, her hands gripping the seat, her eyes locked on him, not running, not hiding. Watching. One of the attackers shifted position, his aim no longer on Daniel, on the car, on Emily. Time slowed. Daniel saw it. Before the trigger could be pulled, he moved Emily down. He shouted. The shout rang out, glass shattered, but Daniel was already there, shielding her. The force drove him back slightly, his body absorbing the impact as he collapsed against the car. Daniel, Emily's voice broke through the chaos. The world blurred for a second, then Thomas fired again. Precise. Decisive. The remaining attackers dropped their weapons. Silence returned just as violently as it had been broken. Emily rushed to Daniel, her hands trembling as she caught him before he hit the ground. No, stay with me, she whispered, her voice shaking. Daniel's breathing was uneven, but his eyes found hers. You are safe, he said quietly. Why would you do that? She demanded, tears forming despite her effort to hold them back. You were already injured. He gave the faintest hint of a smile. Because you did it first. That answer broke something inside her. Emily had spent her entire life giving without expecting anything back. As a child, she learned that kindness was often ignored, sometimes punished. People took and left. Promises broke, but she never stopped choosing kindness, even when it gave her nothing in return. And now for the first time someone chose her back. Sirens echoed faintly in the distance. Thomas moved quickly, checking the surroundings, then returning. We need to move now. But Emily did not move. Her focus stayed on Daniel. You are not dying, she said firmly, pressing her hand against his wound, just like she had the first time she found him. A quiet parallel. Full circle. Daniel's hand weakly touched hers. I am not planning to, he said. Time shifted. Moments later they were back in the car, rushing again, but this time not running. Surviving. The truth unraveled quickly after that night. The betrayal inside Hayes Corporation surfaced. The ones behind the attack were exposed, trusted partners who had grown greedy, believing Daniel's absence would give them control. They were wrong. Weeks passed. Emily stood at the edge of a balcony, overlooking a city she had once struggled to survive in. But now everything was different. Behind her, the space was quiet, elegant, unfamiliar, world she never imagined belonging to. You are thinking too much again. Daniel's voice came from behind her. She turned slightly, He stood there fully recovered, composed. But not the same man she first met. Softer. I am just trying to understand how I ended up here, she said. He walked closer. You ended up here because you chose to stop. She frowned slightly. Stop running, he said. That word settled deeply. Emily looked out at the city again, then back at him. You changed everything, she said quietly. Daniel shook his head. No, he replied. You did. A pause. Then you saved me, he continued. Not just that night, but from becoming someone who only saw the world in transactions. Emily held his gaze. And you saved me from a life where I was invisible, silence, but not empty. Something real. Daniel stepped closer. This was not supposed to happen, he admitted. She gave a small, soft smile. Most important things are not planned. He studied her for a moment. Then I meant what I said before, he added. About you not going back to that life. Emily tilted her head slightly. And what life do I go to instead? Daniel did not hesitate this time. A life with me. The words were simple, but they carried everything. Emotion. Choice. Promise. Emily single quotes S. Breath caught slightly, not because she wasn't sure, but because she understood exactly what it meant. Future she never expected, with someone she never planned to meet. You fell for me when you did not even know me, she said softly. Daniel's expression softened. I knew enough. A quiet pause. Then, and I am still falling. That was the truth. Emily stepped closer, not running. Not hesitating. Then, I guess I should stop pretending I am not, she said. Their worlds had collided in the most unexpected way. A poor girl, a powerful CEO. Kindness. Danger. Choice. And in the end it was not money. Not power. Not status. It was a single moment of kindness that changed everything. Final curious closure. Loop retention payoff. If she had walked away that night, he would have died. If he had not fallen for her, she would have disappeared again. But now the question was no longer how they met. It was how far their love would go when the world tried to tear them apart again. T.